The rain had been falling for hours, washing the streets and filling the air with a heavy, damp smell. The single dad sat in his old car, staring out at the dark, empty road. He had just finished a long day at work, tired and hungry, but something about the storm made him feel restless. As he drove slowly, he saw a small figure in the distance, a woman holding a little girl's hand. They were soaked, their clothes sticking to them, and the girl was shivering from the cold. Without thinking, he pulled over. He stepped out into the rain, his coat doing little to stop the wet from soaking him. The woman looked up, startled, but there was a sense of relief in her eyes when she saw him. He offered them a ride, speaking softly so as not to scare the little girl. The woman hesitated, but the fear in the child's eyes made her nod quickly. He opened the car door, helping them inside. The warmth of the car made the girl sigh in relief, and the woman wrapped her arms around her child, trying to shield her from the wet. The drive was quiet. The dad didn't ask many questions, and the woman didn't speak much. It was enough that they were out of the storm. He noticed the little girl's shoes were soaked, and her socks were full of water. When they arrived at his small home, he hurried to get towels and blankets. He guided them inside, trying not to let the woman feel like a stranger in his home. The little girl's teeth were chattering, and he helped her dry off. The mother watched, her eyes softening as she realized she could trust him. He made a small fire in the old fireplace and brewed some tea. The steam filled the room, making the air warmer and less damp. The little girl clutched a towel, curling up on the couch, and the mother sat nearby, silently grateful. The dad poured 3 cups of tea, careful not to spill, and handed them to the mother and child. They accepted them quietly, their hands wrapping around the warm cups. The girl took a small sip and smiled faintly, the first sign of comfort since the storm had begun. The house was small but tidy. Pictures of family and memories lined the shelves. The dad glanced at them briefly, his heart tightening at memories he kept tucked away. He didn't talk much about himself, but his actions spoke louder than words. He moved around, setting out dry clothes for the little girl, making a corner for her to sleep, and even placing a small toy he had kept from his own child for her to hold. The mother watched, her heart full of mixed emotions, gratitude, relief, and a touch of sadness. The rain outside continued to pour, but inside, the atmosphere slowly shifted. The little girl began to warm up, slowly peeling off her wet clothes with his help. The dad was patient, speaking softly to her, making her laugh with small, silly comments about the rain and puddles outside. The mother joined in, her voice quiet, but full of appreciation. It was the first time she had felt safe since she and her daughter had been stranded in the storm. Dinner was simple. He had some pasta and vegetables that he quickly heated and served. They ate quietly at first, but the little girl, feeling more comfortable, began asking questions about his home and his life. He answered in small pieces, careful not to overwhelm her. She giggled when he showed her a small photo of a puppy he used to have. The mother smiled, watching the little girl relax. Her trust in this stranger slowly building. After dinner, the mother and daughter settled in the living room while the dad washed the dishes. He kept glancing back at them, making sure they were comfortable. The little girl had begun drawing on a piece of paper he had found, creating pictures of rainbows and houses. The mother leaned back, her hand on her daughter's shoulder, and for the first time that day, she let herself breathe. She didn't know this man, but his kindness was real, and it gave her hope. As the evening wore on, the rain showed no sign of stopping. The dad found blankets and extra pillows, arranging them on the couch for the little girl to sleep. He moved quietly, not wanting to disturb them. The mother thanked him softly, her voice breaking slightly. He nodded, understanding that words weren't always necessary. The little girl, now calm and sleepy, rested her head on the pillow, and drifted off. The dad sat in the kitchen, sipping a cup of tea, listening to the sound of the rain and the soft breathing of the child. Memories of his own past, of being alone, and the warmth of a small act of kindness filled him with an unexpected emotion. He realized that helping them was more than just giving shelter. It was about showing care. And in that, he found a strange sense of peace. The night grew deeper, and the storm raged on, but inside, the house was quiet and safe. The mother and daughter slept peacefully, trusting him to protect them from the world outside. He cleaned up the remaining dishes, took a deep breath, and looked out the window at the pouring rain. In that moment, he knew that life had a way of bringing people together in the most unexpected ways. He sat back, thinking about the day. The storm had forced them together, but the bond they had begun to form was real. He wondered about their future, about the struggles they faced, and about the courage it took for them to keep going. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew that as long as they were together in this moment, they were safe. The father's heart softened further when the little girl stirred in her sleep and whispered something about the rain. He smiled quietly, feeling a connection that went beyond words. He moved to close the windows slightly, ensuring no more cold wind came through. The mother watched him from the couch, her eyes filled with appreciation and something else she hadn't expected. Trust. Hours passed, and the storm began to ease. Outside, puddles reflected the dim streetlights, and the air smelled fresh after the heavy rain. Inside, warmth and quiet ruled. The dad finally sat down on his own chair, exhausted but content. He realized that this night, which began with strangers in the rain, had transformed into a night of shared humanity, small gestures, and unexpected trust. He knew the road ahead would be complicated. He didn't know how long they could stay, what challenges awaited them, or how their lives would change. But for now, the mother and her daughter were safe, and he had given them that. And in giving, he found something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope, connection, and a quiet happiness that filled the corners of his small home. The little girl slept soundly. The mother rested beside her, and the dad finally allowed himself a moment of reflection. Outside, the storm faded, leaving the world washed clean, ready for a new day. And inside, in the small living room with blankets, tea and quiet smiles, a bond had been born, one that would shape the lives of all three in ways none of them could yet imagine. Morning light filtered through the rain-soaked windows, soft and gentle. The little girl stirred first, stretching her arms and yawning. She looked around the warm living room, the blanket still wrapped around her small frame, and saw the dad sitting nearby, sipping his morning coffee. She smiled faintly and waved, and he nodded back, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. The mother was still asleep, exhausted from the storm and the long journey that had brought them here. The dad hesitated before waking her, not wanting to disturb her rest, but eventually called softly, making sure she was comfortable. She opened her eyes slowly, noticing the cozy room, the small breakfast he had prepared on the table, and the warmth of the home around her. A soft smile appeared on her face, a mixture of relief and gratitude. Breakfast was simple but filling: toast with butter, eggs, and hot tea. They ate together, the little girl chatting about the pictures she drew last night. The dad listened carefully, asking gentle questions and showing interest in her small world. The mother watched, appreciating how naturally he included her daughter in conversation without forcing anything. It was the first time she had felt this safe since arriving at his home. After breakfast, the rain had slowed to a light drizzle, but the streets were still wet and muddy. The dad offered to help them get settled in the day. He suggested they stay inside until it cleared, and they agreed. The little girl and the dad found small ways to pass the time. They built a simple fort with blankets and chairs, using pillows to create a soft space. They laughed quietly, their voices blending with the gentle sound of rain tapping against the windows. The mother joined them after a while, sitting on the floor with a cup of tea. She watched the dad play with her daughter, noting the patience and care he showed. It was unusual for her to see someone so calm and kind, someone who gave without expecting anything in return. She felt a mixture of awe and relief, knowing that her daughter was safe, warm, and happy. The little girl began to ask questions about the dad's life. He answered with gentle honesty, telling stories about his work, his home, and small memories from his past. He didn't share too much, keeping the focus on comfort and understanding, but enough to show the child that he was real and trustworthy. The mother listened quietly, appreciating the careful way he spoke, understanding that this was more than just a temporary gesture. It was a lesson in kindness for her daughter. As the morning passed, the dad noticed the little girl's clothes were still wet from the storm. He brought out some dry outfits, explaining gently that they were for her comfort. She hesitated at first, unsure, but eventually accepted, giggling when he made a small joke about how even superheroes need clean clothes after a storm. The mother chuckled quietly, grateful for his light-hearted approach that eased tension and fear. The afternoon arrived, and the storm cleared completely. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting warm light into the living room. The dad suggested they take a short walk outside to enjoy the fresh air. The little girl was hesitant at first, remembering the fear of the previous night, but her mother encouraged her. They all stepped out, feeling the soft grass under their feet and smelling the fresh, rain-washed air. The walk was slow and calm. The dad held the little girl's hand gently, showing her the puddles, the birds, and the small flowers that had survived the storm. The mother walked beside them, smiling as she watched her daughter's curiosity return. It was a small moment, but it carried weight, a sign that trust was growing, and that the fear of the night before was slowly fading. When they returned home, the little girl was tired but happy. The dad suggested they sit together in the living room, drawing and coloring. The mother joined, helping her daughter with small tasks, laughing softly when the child made funny faces or colored outside the lines. The warmth of the home, combined with the calm after the storm, created a safe space where laughter and small joys were allowed. Later, the mother shared more about her situation. She spoke carefully, explaining how she had returned from deployment and faced difficulties finding a place to stay. She was honest about her fears and worries, and the dad listened without judgment. His quiet presence allowed her to speak freely, and she felt the weight of her burdens ease slightly. For the first time in a long while, she felt that someone genuinely cared, someone who would not take advantage of her vulnerability. The dad shared small pieces of his own life, enough to show understanding, but not to overshadow their story. He spoke about the challenges of being a single parent, of loss and resilience, and of finding small moments of joy in everyday life. His words were gentle, not preaching, but filled with lived experience. The mother nodded, recognizing that he truly understood the quiet struggles of life, and that empathy was not always about words, but actions. As evening approached, the dad prepared a simple dinner. They ate together, sharing stories of small victories and joys. The little girl was full of questions, and the dad answered each one with care. The mother listened, appreciating how he made her daughter feel seen and valued. It was more than a meal. It was a moment of normalcy, a glimpse of life without fear or uncertainty. After dinner, the mother and daughter settled in the living room, while the dad cleaned up the dishes. The little girl began telling him about her dreams, simple things about her friends, school, and the world she hoped to explore. The dad listened, smiling and encouraging her imagination. The mother watched, feeling a mix of relief and admiration. In these small interactions, she saw that her daughter was finding safety, happiness, and trust again. night fell, and the house grew quiet. The dad set up blankets and pillows for the little girl, making sure she was comfortable. The mother sat nearby, holding a warm cup of tea, her eyes soft with gratitude. They didn't speak much, but the quiet was filled with understanding. Trust had begun to form, and with it, a bond that was gentle, patient, and real. The little girl drifted to sleep, her breathing slow and steady. The mother thanked the dad softly, her voice carrying the weight of her relief and appreciation. He nodded, understanding that words were sometimes unnecessary. The night was calm, the storm long gone, but the warmth of shared humanity filled the small house. The dad sat in his chair, looking out the window at the moonlight, reflecting off wet streets. He thought about the strange turn of events that had brought them together, the storm, the fear, and the chance to help. He realized that kindness was not always about grand gestures, but about the small, patient acts that showed people they were seen, safe and valued. He remembered the laughter, the soft questions, and the quiet moments of trust. The mother and daughter had brought light into his home in ways he hadn't expected. He understood that helping them was not just about shelter, food, or warmth. It was about creating a space where fear and worry could fade. Even for a little while, the night passed peacefully. The mother and daughter slept in comfort, knowing that someone cared for them. The dad stayed awake a little longer, reflecting on the bond they had begun to form. He thought about the future, knowing there would be challenges, but also understanding that this night had laid the foundation for something meaningful. He knew that the storm had not just washed the streets clean, but had also brought people together. In the quiet of the night, he felt hope. Hope that kindness could transform lives, that trust could grow from simple acts, and that human connection was stronger than fear or uncertainty. As he finally closed his eyes, he felt a deep sense of peace. The day had begun with rain and uncertainty, but it had ended with laughter, trust, and a small, quiet bond. It was a reminder that even in the most ordinary moments, extraordinary connections could form, changing lives in ways that words alone could never capture. The next morning, the sun shone through the windows, bringing a warm glow to the living room. The little girl woke up first, her hair tousled and her small frame stretching beneath the blanket. She looked around and saw the dad already making breakfast. She smiled and tiptoed to the kitchen, her tiny feet making soft sounds on the floor. He turned to her with a gentle smile and a wave. The mother was still asleep, resting after the long night. The little girl giggled quietly, feeling safe in the calm warmth of the home. Breakfast was simple, but the dad made it special by letting the little girl stir the eggs in the pan. She was cautious at first, afraid she might spill, but he guided her hand gently. The mother finally came into the kitchen, smiling softly at the scene before her. It was ordinary, yet it held a special magic, a sense of normal life returning after the storm and the fear they had faced. The father and mother exchanged quiet looks, both feeling the fragile, budding trust growing between them. As the day progressed, the dad realized that helping them was not going to be simple. Bills, work, and his own responsibilities made him aware that he couldn't provide long-term support alone. He didn't say this aloud, but the worry showed in his careful expressions and in the thoughtful way he planned their day. He decided to focus on immediate needs: food, clothing, warmth, and comfort, and leave the bigger challenges for later, when they could be addressed together. The little girl asked if they could play outside. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the grass soft and the air fresh. They stepped out into the backyard, the sun warming their faces. The dad watched carefully, holding her hand, and they splashed lightly in small puddles. She laughed freely, the sound bright and clear, reminding the dad of the simple joys in life that often went unnoticed. The mother joined them after a while, sitting on the grass and letting her daughter run to her occasionally. Enjoying the freedom of the moment. By midday, the little girl began feeling unwell. She had been wet the previous day, and the sudden activity had left her shivering again. Her cheeks were flushed, and her breathing was slightly rapid. The mother grew anxious, her protective instincts kicking in. The dad immediately took charge, moving quickly to get her inside, drying her off, and checking her temperature. They realized she needed medical attention, and the dad offered to drive them to the nearest clinic. At the clinic, the little girl was examined carefully. The nurse smiled warmly, comforting her while the dad held her hand, whispering small reassurances. The mother watched closely, silently thanking him for his steady presence. The doctor confirmed it was a mild fever and some chills, nothing serious, but it needed attention and rest. The dad nodded and promised he would take care of everything, and the mother finally relaxed, trusting him completely for the first time since the storm. Back at home, the dad prepared a warm bath for the little girl, helping her carefully. She laughed when he made small jokes about bubbles and bath toys, the fear from the previous days slowly melting away. The mother stood nearby, watching them, her heart filled with gratitude. She realized how rare it was to find someone so patient, kind, and genuinely caring. The dad's actions spoke louder than words, showing them both that safety and trust could be rebuilt through simple acts of care. After the bath, the dad wrapped the little girl in a soft towel and helped her into clean clothes. He made her a small cup of warm milk, which she sipped slowly, feeling comforted. The mother helped her daughter settle on the couch with blankets, and the dad joined them, sitting quietly and observing. The room was calm, the atmosphere filled with warmth and care. No one spoke much, but the silence was comfortable, a sign of growing trust and connection. Later, the mother opened up more about her situation. She spoke quietly about the challenges of being a soldier, returning home, and facing unexpected difficulties. Her voice trembled slightly as she admitted her fears about finding a stable place for herself and her daughter. The dad listened carefully, nodding and offering small words of reassurance. He didn't interrupt or judge. He simply let her speak, allowing her to unload the weight she had been carrying for so long. The dad shared small parts of his life too, without overshadowing theirs. He spoke about his own experiences as a single parent, the loneliness he had faced, and the small ways he tried to keep hope alive. The mother listened, understanding that he knew the challenges of being responsible for someone else, of feeling alone, and of finding strength in small, ordinary moments. Their conversation was quiet, but profound, a shared understanding that deepened their connection. As the evening approached, the little girl had rested, and her fever was down. The dad prepared a simple dinner, and they ate together quietly. The mother watched her daughter eat, noticing how comfortable she had become in the dad's presence. The laughter that had returned to her daughter's eyes brought a quiet joy to her heart. The dad noticed it too, a small smile forming on his lips as he saw the little girl enjoying the meal and feeling safe again. After dinner, the little girl wanted to read stories before bed. The dad and mother sat beside her on the couch, taking turns reading aloud. The little girl listened intently, her small hand resting on the dad's arm occasionally. She laughed at the funny parts and gasped at the exciting moments. The mother and dad exchanged smiles, silently acknowledging the small miracle of trust and connection that had formed between them. When the story ended, the little girl yawned, signaling that it was time for bed. The dad helped her into pajamas, and the mother tucked her into blankets on the couch. The little girl hugged a small toy tightly, looking at both of them with sleepy eyes, feeling safe and loved. The mother thanked the dad softly, her voice filled with emotion. He nodded, understanding that words weren't always necessary. Their actions had spoken volumes. Night settled over the house, the quiet punctuated by occasional sounds from outside. The dad sat in his chair, reflecting on the day. It had been challenging, filled with small crises and moments of worry. Yet it had also been filled with laughter, trust, and connection. He realized that helping them was not just about providing shelter or food. It was about showing care, patience, and understanding. It was about being present when it mattered most. He thought about the little girl, asleep and peaceful, and the mother, quietly resting nearby. Their lives had intersected through chance, through a storm, but the bond that had formed was real and meaningful. He knew that there would be challenges ahead, finding longer-term solutions, dealing with financial pressures, and navigating the uncertainties of life, but he also knew that the trust they had built tonight would help them face those challenges together. The dad glanced out the window at the night sky. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the air fresh and calm. The world outside was quiet, but inside, the warmth of shared humanity filled the room. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had made a difference, however small, in the lives of these two people. And in that difference, he found a renewed sense of purpose and connection that he hadn't felt in a long time. He sat quietly, sipping a final cup of tea, watching the mother and daughter sleep. The house was calm, safe, and filled with a sense of hope. The challenges ahead were real, but for now, they had each other. And in the quiet of the night, the dad realized that sometimes the smallest acts of care could create the strongest bonds, shaping lives in ways that were unexpected, meaningful, and lasting. The morning was calm, and the sun shone brightly, reflecting off the wet streets and making the world feel fresh. The little girl woke up first, stretching her arms and yawning, her face still flushed slightly from the fever she had battled the day before. She smiled when she saw the dad already moving around the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The warmth in the house was comforting, and the mother stirred shortly after, sitting up with a quiet smile. The house had grown quiet, but the presence of trust and care lingered in every corner. Breakfast was light, but filled with laughter. The little girl had regained her energy and curiosity, asking questions about the food and the small routines of the dad's life. He answered with gentle humor, making small jokes about the eggs or toast that caused the little girl to giggle. The mother joined in the conversation, appreciating the calm and joy in these simple moments. It was ordinary, yet it held a sense of peace and connection that had been missing from all their lives before. The day passed slowly, filled with small, ordinary moments that created bonds without words. The dad helped the little girl with drawing and reading, while the mother prepared some clothes for donation. The house was alive with the small sounds of daily life pages, turning, laughter, clinking dishes, but beneath it all, there was a quiet tension. The dad knew he couldn't support them indefinitely, and the mother understood that relying on a stranger had limits. Still, neither spoke of it, focusing instead on the warmth and care that filled the room. By late afternoon, the little girl had become restless, asking if they could go outside. The dad and mother agreed, careful to keep their steps light and cautious. The sun had dried the streets, leaving the air fresh and fragrant. The little girl ran ahead, laughing, her small feet splashing lightly in the leftover puddles. The dad followed closely, holding her hand when needed, while the mother watched from behind, smiling at the sight of her daughter enjoying freedom again. It was a small joy, but it held immense meaning for them all, a sign that life could be gentle, even after fear and hardship. As they returned inside, the mother sat on the couch, resting while the little girl played quietly with toys the dad had gathered. The dad prepared tea, moving calmly around the kitchen, making sure everything was in order. He paused briefly, looking at the mother with a soft expression. Their eyes met, sharing a silent understanding. Life was unpredictable, and challenges remained, but the trust between them was growing stronger with each passing hour. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was sharp and clear, breaking the calm in an instant. The little girl looked up, startled, and clutched her mother's arm. The mother's eyes widened slightly, her instincts alert. The dad moved toward the door, cautious but composed. He opened it slowly, revealing a social worker standing in the doorway, a kind but firm expression on their face. They introduced themselves and explained that they had been trying to locate the mother and daughter to offer proper assistance and support. The knock brought a mixture of emotions. Relief, fear, and uncertainty collided in the mother's heart. She looked at the dad, seeking guidance, while the little girl hid slightly behind her. The dad spoke softly, inviting the social worker inside. He explained the situation briefly, highlighting the care and temporary shelter he had provided. The social worker listened attentively, nodding and asking questions with professionalism and empathy. Their presence was a turning point, a promise that stability and help were within reach. The social worker explained the resources available: temporary housing, educational support for the little girl, and counseling for the mother. They assured the mother that her daughter would be safe and cared for, and that she could receive guidance to rebuild their lives. The mother's eyes welled up with tears, a mix of relief and gratitude. She had feared relying on others, but the presence of this professional showed her that help could be real, structured, and lasting. The dad watched quietly, his heart swelling with a mix of pride and humility. He realized that while he had provided temporary shelter and care, he could not solve all their problems alone. The social worker's arrival meant that the mother and daughter would have access to resources he could not provide, giving them a chance for stability and growth. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that his actions had bridged the gap between fear and hope. The little girl began to relax, sensing that the social worker was friendly and trustworthy. The mother reassured her gently, explaining that this person was there to help, not take them away. The dad knelt down to the little girl's level, offering a warm smile and a small hug. She responded with a quiet nod, her eyes filled with trust and understanding. It was a delicate moment, showing the power of kindness, patience, and careful guidance. The social worker asked about their immediate needs, and the dad provided details about what had happened during the storm and the last few days. He described the mother and daughter's arrival, their health concerns, and the temporary care he had given. The mother added small details, expressing gratitude and highlighting the care he had shown. Together, they painted a picture of resilience, hope, and the impact of human kindness. After gathering information, the social worker explained the next steps. They would arrange temporary housing, ensure the little girl could attend school safely, and provide support for the mother as she adjusted to civilian life again. The mother listened carefully, feeling a sense of relief she hadn't felt in weeks. She realized that she could now focus on recovery and stability, knowing that help was available and reliable. The dad stepped back, observing the scene with quiet pride. He had played a crucial role in providing immediate safety and comfort, and now the professional guidance would ensure long-term security. He felt a deep satisfaction in knowing that his simple acts of kindness, offering a ride, providing warmth, and showing patience had created a bridge to a brighter future. It was a reminder that small gestures could have profound impacts. The mother spoke softly to the dad, expressing her gratitude once more. Her voice was filled with sincerity and emotion. The little girl hugged him briefly, her small arms conveying trust and appreciation in a way words could not. The dad smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart that was both comforting and humbling. In that moment, he understood that helping others was not just about solving problems. It was about creating connections, showing care, and being present when it mattered most. The social worker arranged for temporary accommodations and explained that they would follow up regularly. The mother felt a sense of relief, knowing that professional support would be available, and that her daughter would have stability and care. The dad helped gather a few belongings for their transition, making sure the little girl was comfortable and calm. They moved slowly, carefully, ensuring that the moment of change was gentle and reassuring. By evening, the arrangements were in place. The mother and daughter were prepared to move to temporary housing, and the social worker thanked the dad for his extraordinary care. The dad nodded, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had helped bridge a critical moment in their lives, and now they could move forward with hope and stability. The little girl waved, smiling faintly, her eyes bright with trust and security. The mother hugged him briefly, conveying gratitude that went beyond words. As night fell, the dad returned to his empty house, the warmth of the day still lingering. The storm had passed, both literally and figuratively, leaving a path of hope and renewal. He reflected on the journey of the last few days, the fear, the rain, the laughter, and the quiet moments of trust. He realized that life had a way of bringing people together in unexpected ways, creating bonds that could change lives forever. He sat quietly, sipping a cup of tea, thinking about the mother and daughter and the future that awaited them. The social worker's arrival had been a turning point, offering stability, guidance, and reassurance. The dad understood that he had played a vital role, providing the bridge that allowed them to reach this point. It was a moment of quiet pride, humility, and reflection. The night outside was calm, the air fresh and clear. Inside, the dad felt a sense of peace. The challenges of life remained, but he had witnessed the power of kindness, patience, and human connection. He realized that even small actions could have profound effects, shaping lives in ways that were meaningful, lasting, and deeply human. As he finally prepared for bed, he reflected on the bond he had formed with the mother and daughter. Though their paths were diverging for the moment, the connection they had built would remain. It was a bond forged in the storm, nurtured through care and trust, and solidified through acts of empathy. The dad understood that life's unexpected encounters often held the most significance, and that being present for someone in need could create ripples of hope that extended far beyond a single day. The morning after the social worker's visit was quiet and filled with a sense of anticipation. The little girl woke up first, rubbing her eyes and stretching, her small face bright with curiosity. She had been reassured about the temporary housing and the safety it promised. She turned to her mother, who was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with a cup of tea. The mother smiled softly, brushing the hair from her daughter's face, trying to make the morning feel calm and reassuring. Both knew that today would mark a big change, but there was a sense of hope in the air. The dad was already moving around the kitchen, preparing breakfast for them. He had offered to make a simple meal to help start the day gently. The little girl came into the kitchen, eyes bright, as she watched him crack eggs and toast bread. The mother followed, taking a seat at the small table, silently appreciating the warmth and normalcy in the scene. It was ordinary, yet it carried a weight of calm before stepping into a future that was uncertain but filled with possibility. They ate quietly at first, savoring the small comforts of food, warmth, and shared moments. The little girl giggled when the dad made a small joke about the butter melting too fast, and the mother laughed softly. For a moment, everything felt safe and familiar. The dad used the time to talk gently about the day ahead, explaining how the social worker would guide them, and that they would be moving to a place where they could feel secure. The mother nodded, appreciating his careful words, and the little girl listened intently, absorbing the new possibilities with a mixture of excitement and caution. After breakfast, they gathered their belongings. The dad helped organize small bags, ensuring the little girl had her favorite toys and blankets. The mother carefully packed what they could carry, and the little girl held her hand, squeezing it briefly, a silent acknowledgement of the care and trust that had grown over the past few days. The dad moved calmly, offering reassurances and small smiles. The house, once filled with uncertainty, now felt like a place where kindness had transformed lives, leaving memories that would linger long after they left. A social worker arrived promptly, cheerful yet professional, ready to guide them through the transition. They greeted the mother and daughter warmly, taking a moment to talk to the little girl, explaining what to expect. The dad watched quietly, feeling both pride and a touch of melancholy. He had grown attached to them, and letting them go, even to a place that promised stability and care, was an emotional moment. But he knew this was the right step, the bridge from temporary safety to lasting security. They stepped outside into the fresh air. The sun had cleared the sky completely, reflecting off the streets and gardens, making the world feel renewed. The little girl clutched her mother's hand tightly, glancing occasionally at the dad. He knelt briefly, smiling warmly, and handed her a small note with words of encouragement, reminding her to be brave, kind, and curious. She held it carefully, her eyes wide with understanding. The mother thanked him softly, her voice breaking slightly, conveying gratitude that went far beyond words. The drive to the temporary housing was quiet. The little girl leaned against her mother, watching the passing streets with interest. The mother held her hand, sharing quiet words of comfort and encouragement. The social worker explained the arrangements, the resources available, and the support they would receive. It was overwhelming at first, but the careful guidance and steady presence of the social worker helped ease their anxieties. The dad remained in the background, a calm and reassuring presence, even as he knew his role was about to shift. Upon arrival, the temporary home was modest but warm, filled with light and space for the little girl to play. The social worker helped them settle in, showing them the rooms, the small garden, and the area for school and recreation. The little girl explored cautiously, holding her mother's hand, but gradually her curiosity and excitement took over. The mother smiled, realizing that her daughter was beginning to feel secure again, her trust slowly rebuilding in a world that had felt uncertain and frightening. The social worker arranged for the mother to meet a counselor, someone who could help her process the past and plan for the future. They discussed schooling, routines, and small steps toward stability. The dad stayed for a while, helping organize the little girl's room and making sure the mother understood the support available. He answered questions, reassured them both, and offered small advice born from experience. Finally, he prepared to leave, knowing his role had come to a natural end. The goodbye was quiet, but filled with emotion. The little girl hugged him tightly, her small arms conveying trust, gratitude, and affection. The mother embraced him, whispering heartfelt thanks. He smiled, feeling a deep warmth and satisfaction that only comes from helping someone in need. The moment was bittersweet. He had grown attached. But he knew that this transition offered them something he could not: stability, professional guidance, and a chance to rebuild their lives fully. As the dad drove away, he reflected on the journey of the past few days. The storm had brought them together, but it was kindness, patience, and empathy that had sustained the bond. He thought about the little girl's laughter, the mother's quiet gratitude, and the shared moments that had made them feel safe and cared for. He realized that his actions, small and simple as they were, had changed lives in ways that might never be fully visible, but would leave lasting impacts. Back at his own home, the dad walked slowly through the quiet rooms, now empty. The memories lingered: the laughter, the quiet conversations, the moments of trust and care. He brewed a cup of tea and sat by the window, looking out at the world. The rain that had brought them together seemed like a distant memory, replaced by sunshine and hope. He understood that life's unexpected encounters often held the most meaning, and that being present for someone in need could ripple outward, creating change in ways unseen. Over the following days, the dad received occasional updates from the social worker. The mother and daughter were settling in, adjusting to routines, and finding moments of joy and stability. The little girl was attending school, her laughter returning fully, and the mother was taking steps toward employment and independence. Each update brought a sense of fulfillment and pride to the dad. He had played a role in creating a bridge from fear to hope, and that knowledge filled him with quiet satisfaction. The dad returned to his routine, but the experience left a mark on him. He approached life with renewed empathy, noticing small ways to help others, whether it was a neighbor in need, a stranger on the street, or someone struggling quietly. He understood that kindness was not about grand gestures, but about presence, patience, and understanding. The bond he had formed, brief as it might have seemed, had taught him the profound impact of human connection. Months later, the mother and daughter maintained contact. They sent letters, small drawings, and occasional visits. Each interaction was filled with warmth and gratitude. The little girl would tell the dad about school, friends, and the little adventures she had, and the mother would share milestones and moments of triumph. These connections reminded the dad that the impact of his kindness had not faded, but had grown, influencing lives in ways that continued to resonate. The dad often reflected on that stormy night, when a chance encounter had brought them into his home. He remembered the fear in their eyes, the cold and wet, the uncertainty of their situation. And he remembered the trust that slowly built, the laughter that returned, and the bonds that formed. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, human kindness could light a path forward. The story of that brief but transformative time became a quiet memory he carried with him, a memory of hope, resilience, and connection. It reminded him that life was unpredictable, but small, caring actions could change the course of someone's life. And in helping them, he had discovered something equally profound: the joy of making a difference, the power of trust, and the endearing impact of empathy. As he sat quietly in his living room, sipping tea and reflecting, he understood the truth of life's unexpected gifts. The mother and daughter had found safety, warmth, and guidance. He had offered care, compassion, and presence. Together, even briefly, they had created something lasting, a bond of trust, a bridge of hope, and a reminder that kindness, patience, and humanity could transform lives in ways that words alone could never capture.